But she said, I turned around and she said, I seen the biggest, blackest wolf I've ever seen in my life, she said. I said, what do you mean? It was just a big dog? She said, no. This thing was freakish big, you know. And she said it had red eyes and it was growling. I said, really? But it was on all fours, you know. Now, it could have been a wolf. Well, not a wolf. There's no wolves around here. It could have been a big dog, you know, but I don't know why. Because she's very, very intelligent, you know, and she's got her wits about her 100% for her age, but she's not old. But, I mean, she was like, no. She said this thing was like 5 foot, you know, tall on all fours. I said, what'd you do? She said, I took off running. We could hear it behind us. Yeah. I said, well, what happened? I said, how far did you have to run? She said, it wasn't that far, about 100 yards, and we could still hear it. I said, did you look back? No. She said, as soon as we hit the yard and hit the porch, we turned around, it was gone, she said. And it was right behind her the whole time because she could hear it.
I'm Rye, your Kodega, here to lead you through the shadows of the unknown. My journeys have carried me across hidden corners of the world to places steeped in wonder, whispers, and unanswered questions. Walk with me as we uncover ancient civilizations, unravel unexplained phenomena, and chase the legends that refuse to die. Welcome to Kodega's Codex of Curiosities. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Kodega's Codex of Curiosities, and it's great to see you guys back. Of course, we're jumping into another episode. This episode is going to be full of supernatural, other experiences, and everything like that, everything under that sun. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like. If you're listening on YouTube make sure you hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. If you're on Apple, Spotify, it would be great if you could leave a 5-star review and really help me out. You know, there is some people who somehow just get turned off and then they leave you a 1-star, and I need to help reverse that. So you can help me do that. That sounds terrible, but that's what we're going with. All right, everybody. Let's welcome Ashes to the show. Ashes, welcome to the Codex of Curiosities. I'm glad to have you here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Ryan. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Now, you reached out to me. You are moderator on Dano's show, the Cryptid Podcast. You also have your own shows. So why don't we, before we jump into anything, let's find out where people can find you and where they're looking for that.
Well, you can find me on YouTube. My gaming channel is Ashes Antics, and you'll know it's the right channel by the logo, of course. And then I also got a newer podcast channel on YouTube. It's called The Boom Boom Room, and the way you find it is you got to type at The Boom Boom Room 777. It's kind of a little bit hard to find, but until I get bigger, hopefully one day. But and I'm Ashes Antics. I'm also on Instagram, X, and TikTok. So
okay, and the Boom Boom Room. So Ashes Antics is your gaming channel, but the Boom Boom Room, what is that?
Well, the Boom Boom Room is mainly interviews from different type of creators, and from gaming creators to the cryptic world. And I also have a little series called Whispers Across America, where I tell each week 4 folklore stories from each state. So it's there's a lot of supernatural and cryptic stuff on there. I'm kind of, it's a newer channel, so I'm kind of going towards that more than anything. So
All right. So you're fine tuning it as you go along.
yes,
You're kind of finding your groove.
exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. So Ashes, like I said, you reached out to me. You said you had some experiences. I read them all, but of course that was about like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And my mind is like Swiss cheese, which is great because when I'm listening to you tell me the stories tonight, when you start telling your experiences, it'll be like hearing it all for the first time again. So
Yeah.
where should we start with this? Where are we beginning?
Well, I guess I'll start when I was a kid, because that's the first kind of I don't know if you call it encounter or supernatural thing or event that happened to me. And it, it's been so long ago, but I've never forgot this. And this was probably one of just the first, like I said, incident that happened, that it's imprinted my mind, forever. But I think right, I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I used to be scared of the dark a lot. Before I start, I don't know if this has had to do with anything, in my life, a lot of supernatural things, but I'm English Romney. And what people don't know what that is, if you don't know, that's, slang term, a gypsy, full blood gypsy. And, and I know that a lot of my kin way back, used to, tell fortunes and stuff like that. And my grandma quit doing that in the 70s when she, got saved and, become a Christian. But anyway, my immediate family are all, Christians, most of them are passed away. But anyway, I was 7 or 8 years old. I remember I was scared of the dark. And I would sleep on the floor, by my mom and dad's bed. And sometimes my sister would, sleep there with me too. She was a little younger than me. But I remember one night I woke up, I would sleep on my stomach. That's how I'd always sleep. And I never did after this incident. But I felt something jump on my back, you know. And as far as the details of it, I can't say, well, I thought it was this and that because it's been so long ago. But I remember like something jumped on my back and started shaking me, like, grabbed my shirt and started shaking me. So I jumped up. I did, and I've tried to wake my mom and dad up, and they wouldn't wake up. You know what I mean? But finally, my mom, I remember saying, "Go back to bed. It's just a bad dream. Go back to bed." And I remember going back to bed. And like I said, as far as the fine-tuned details, I can't really remember all of them, but I remember getting up later. I remember being scared to death, first of all. But I remember we lived in a mobile home at the time, and I remember walking in the bathroom, and I guess I went to, take a pee or whatever, and I looked through the window, a little small window, and I saw like a small creature. It was like maybe, I don't know, 2 foot tall, 3 foot. Remember it was small, but I don't remember the details of the face or nothing, but I remember like its legs had fur, you know. Now, when this happened in mostly my whole life, I thought it was an imp or a demon. Okay. But it still might be. But in the last year or two that I've deep dived in the cryptic world, I was kind of thinking that it might be, a little person they call, because I live in eastern Oklahoma, LeFlore County. Well, right now I live about 15 miles from there. I'm over in Arkansas, but LeFlore County's infamous, LeFlore County Sasquatch Wars, which I didn't know until last year or two. It was supposed to have some kind of Bigfoot wars, long time ago. And then southeast Oklahoma, which is infamous, for Bigfoot, Sasquatch activity. But I also had an encounter a little bit later. I'll tell it. But That's all I remember. I've told the story a few times. That's all I can remember. And I know it wasn't a dream, because I remember physically getting up. I remember physically waking my mom up, and, but as far as what happened, I don't know if it was something demonic, but I thought it was demonic because a little bit later, I'll tell you a story I had, was in a motel room with something I know was demonic, but that was that, and I seen it running, like a little path too,
Okay,
just like
yeah,
it turned around and looked and just ran.
I would definitely side on the little people like the duende or like here in the Yucatan Peninsula, aluches is something that people talk about quite regularly, which are little people as well. And that is something that years
Yeah.
ago would never have crossed my mind, but now it's something that's more and more common. That is something that is appearing more in these stories. I don't mean stories, but stories, experiences, all the above. And so when you said this thing was like pulling on you, if you can remember, was it standing on you as well, like standing on your back and like pulling at the same time?
Yeah, I think so. I think I could, I could feel it physically. It was weight, but it wasn't very heavy. That's what was freaky. And I remember it, jerking me and shaking me. And, that this land here is not far, 3 miles from, the, Spiral Mountains. It was, an old, Native American burial grounds that's supposed to have been 2,000 years old by the Cato Native Americans, and, there's been a lot of supernatural stuff that's happened around there. But, and then when she was passing away, about a month or two before she'd passing away, she'd always say she seen Native Americans, all around outside, and which was, freaky, I don't think, and she still had her mind too, I mean, she was smart, but she's seen a lot of spiritual things. But, I don't want to, go all over the place on,
No, no, no,
me
no, for
telling,
sure. Yeah.
but my uncle, he was a pastor. He's passed away now. He'd see a lot of demonic things. He would always tell me, and my mom, you know, she would tell me things that she would see, but she was a Christian, very spiritual, and so was my uncle. But I guess the next day, I guess I'm trying to go a little bit in order, was my first cousin. See, all this land we lived on, it was right off it's off a 2-lane highway, and it was lots of mobile homes that my whole family owned. All it was about 7 or 8 mobile homes, and then we owned about an acre of woods. And at the end of this road, and this road was kind of like a half horseshoe, or maybe an L, a backwards L.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there was a 2-lane road that went dead end 3 miles into the Arkansas River, where the Spiral Mounds was. But my first cousin's grandma passed away right in front of me. She had a heart attack when I was 14. Well, yeah, that was a little bit traumatizing, for a 14-year-old. But me and him was walking years later, and in the South in August, it's very hot. Everybody knows that. And even at nighttime, it's hot. You'll be sweating. And one night we were walking, and it was I say about 8:30, 9 o'clock, muggy, hot. So we're walking down the road not far from, my place, my mom's place, all my relatives, and where his grandma passed away. And we're walking, and all of a sudden, right, it gets freezing, bone chill cold. So cold that I looked at him, he looked at me, and we started blowing smoke out of our mouth. And we were stunned. He said, "You feel that?" I said, "Yeah, I feel that." I said, "It's freezing, And it wasn't just like cold wind hit you or something, or a draft outside. It was actually bone chilling cold for about I'd say 5 seconds. We sat there for about 2 seconds. We started walking. It was still cold, and all of a sudden, it just vanished. And that was kind of a freaky thing that happened to me.
Definitely, definitely. Like I got to ask, like, did you walk down into like a valley or anything like that, or was
No,
it flat? Because
no, all flat land.
okay, yeah, or there was no creek coming by or anything like that, because that would be a possibility. But yeah, we gotta try narrowing this down. But yeah, so it sounds like you guys walk through some sort of I don't know, temporal, not temporals in time, but temperature, like climate issue. There was something going on in this area.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it probably, it
Mhm.
probably was just some natural
But
occurrence.
no, I'm not saying natural. I think a lot of these, and personally, like a lot of these temperature shifts occur when there's spirits pulling in energy, and they're making things much colder. It could be something along that line, or a place where the veil is much thinner, and you're crossing over in a different type of plane, and there's a crossover of temperature, not maybe any other physical crossover, but just a temperature crossover.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was definitely freaky because I know my mom would say, because like I said, it was, this road would make an L.
Hmm.
And I remember in the 80s, when I was a kid, they would have these big giant tent revivals,
Okay.
in this land, or of relatives' land. And what it was these Romney revivals, and these English and Irish and Scottish, Romneys would come there, and get together and have
Sorry,
revival.
Rob. Sorry, please, please clarify. What is a Robney?
Gypsy.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just the correct term, Romney, But, you know, uh, anyway, yeah, it's kind of hard. That's the only way you can explain it. It's just, just say the slang term gypsy. But
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah, I don't mind people, some people get offended, but yeah, anyway, they would have these revivals, and they'd get together, all the clans all over the United States would come there, and they'd have revivals. And my mom would say, that land, you got to watch it, son, because they would cast out these demons down here, and they didn't know what they were doing. Maybe she was making sense, maybe telling me that, because you know how it is with that, when they cast out demons, they go to a dry place, and searching for other people. But she said there was a lot of possessed people that was, got it prayed out of them. And if
And
I
and
mean,
then
it
where
was
do the demons go? You cast them out of something. Sometimes they'll go into other things or just roam
yeah,
aimlessly looking for something before they head to the
yeah,
wasteland. Yes.
yeah. So you don't know. Maybe she was making sense. Maybe she wasn't. Did she know? I don't know. But I'll and then on that exact land, I got married back in 2000. It was 11. And when I got married in 2011, I bought a new mobile home. Me and my wife at the time, and I had it there. And I remember I didn't even have the skirt put up yet. It wasn't that old. And I don't remember what time of the season it was, but it was at nighttime, and she was asleep, and my stepkids were. So I went out on the front porch. We had a little small porch to smoke a cigarette. Well, the woods I told you that we owned was about, I say, 50 or 60 yards to the edge of the woods. And at the edge of the woods, there was a concrete pad because there used to be a church there that my uncles and my dad built, but somebody burned it down. Yeah, the arson didn't burn it down, which we never found out who done it. But they built it back in the late 70s, so when they moved there, they have somewhere they can go, worship, do the thing. But it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock at night, and I went out on his front porch, smoked a cigarette. Now, this incident right here got me, into the cryptic, you know, mindset and really got me going down the rabbit hole here. But like I said, it was about 2011. It was about 2:30 in the morning. I went out on the porch, smoked a cigarette. I remember the moon, was bright. I could see fairly well. And we didn't have no street lights. I think the neighbor to the left had a street lights, her grandma and grandpa, my wife at the time. But anyway, right, I got hearing something coming through the woods. And I'm old hillbilly hick, country boy. And I thought, that it was one of those, one of my relatives or somebody coming through the woods on one of those side by sides or mules, those little ATV things. And because I could hear it crashing through there. I mean, crashing from, a little ways off. But I couldn't see because these woods, there was a clearing in these woods. If you could actually, because when I was a kid, you could follow those woods. Now it might get thin or it might get wide, the woods, but you could follow all the way to the Arkansas River, about 2.5, 3 miles. But, I know there's a little pond back there, and because we'd go fishing as kids. But long story short, or short story long, I heard it crashing through there. And, but here's the deal. I did not hear a motor. That's what was freaky. And what it actually sounded like was a Volkswagen Beetle coming through there, or an elephant. But there was no kind of motor sound. And I remember in my head, what is this? You know how your mind's,
Of course. You're trying to make sense of something.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually I started seeing trees kind of part. And that's when I started, getting a little scared, what is this? And only thing that I could kind of tell you reminded me of was Jurassic Park is what it reminded me of coming through there, Yeah. The trees were just going like this, I guess trees, fit, a little smaller trees, 15, 20 feet, no big job, but there's big trees in there. Well, eventually I'm looking, I hear it crashing and it stops right when it gets to the edge. Well, when it stopped, right, all I can tell you is the thing roared. And when it roared, yeah, it sounded like a T-Rex, an elephant, Godzilla all in one. And it vibrated my whole insides from that far off, 50, 60 yards. And the only thing I could the feeling I got is I used to go to a lot of NASCAR races, IndyCar races, and funny cars. And that when those cars rev up and your insides vibrate, your intestines, guts, heart, lungs, everything, that's how it felt. But the roar, the roar was like so guttural, it was like it was right in front of my face, like a horror movie,
And how far away was this? Was it just at the edge of those woods, kind of where that cement pad was?
Yes. It did not come out in the clearing. Now, as far as my mindset on Bigfoot, I believe Bigfoot, but I believe 100% it was just some undiscovered animal and it's good at hiding. After all this and the last year or two, my mind changed, but it did. I remember I was just frozen stiff. Now, did it hit me with infrasound? I don't know. Was I just scared? I was scared. That's probably the most scared I've ever been.
Yeah, because there's, you can be fight, flight, or freeze as well. People forget that there's freeze and you just don't move. You don't act. And that seems to be one of that. I do have a question was there anything else associated with this? Was there any smell? Was there any other strange things going on prior to that? Did you guys do anything prior to that incident, like go out in the woods or anything like that?
No. Now somebody else, maybe a neighbor or, maybe a cousin, because, we used to hang out in the woods, we used to live in them basically, going in and out. But, that's 2011. I wasn't going in woods much. And what I want to point out, I was sober, at the time, that it was my second marriage, it was bad marriage. It ended, but as far as that goes, I wasn't spiritually strong with God. I mean, I don't know if you mind me mentioning God, and this or not, but I wasn't strong with God at the time. I wasn't like I am now. I was pretty well lost. I wasn't living, real bad or anything, but it doesn't matter. I wasn't living right. But when it happened, after it roared, all I remember, this was what the weird part is. I remember going inside, and at the time, I thought it was demonic, just 100% demonic. I thought it was because I had a lot of other demonic things going on at the time, and that's what I thought it was. And so I remember going inside. I think that I started praying, even though it wasn't, living right for God. I remember I started praying, and I can't not remember anything else. That's what's weird. All I know is I woke up the next day, but I know I went to bed. Now, if that would have happened, I would have went out there and, the next day at least, or looked or done something, but I didn't do it. I wasn't interested. My mind wasn't on cryptics or nothing like that. So, that's what was weird. But I've told a lot of people that story. A lot of people think it was, I didn't see anything. I can't say 100% it was Sasquatch or Bigfoot, but a lot of people, in their opinion, think that's what it was.
I agree completely with you. Like I would say it's Sasquatch, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But you can't 100% say it because, it was in the woods. You didn't have that clear visual of it. But nonetheless, everything, what else is it supposed to be? Was it supposed to be Bigfoot? Was it supposed to be like Godzilla or T-Rex or something like that? No, this was clearly a Bigfoot encounter. And when you're saying you thought it was demonic and now you're thinking maybe not, it still doesn't mean that it's not demonic. You know, like more and more I'm learning, maybe there's a tie. Maybe there's a tie in with these creatures.
Yeah.
But again, no expert. There is no experts, and it's only an all speculation.
Exactly. And, there's little things that's happening around there too from relatives and friends. I had a guy tell me the other day when he was a teenager, there was, when you ride around with a girl, and you want to park with them or whatever, there was on the back roads, there was a little Catholic church. Everybody would park by, and do what they wanted to do, close by it. I know it's awful saying, but, and I remember I've had 3 different people say they've had weird stuff happen there, something coming through the woods. And who told me that the other day? I don't even know who it was, but it was a cousin. But he said that he could not start the truck up fast enough to start coming. He heard something just crashing through the woods and scared him. But then I had another relative because when you would come on the highway and make that L on this dirt road we all lived in, you would come to another 2-lane. That's the one that would dead end. Well, when you pull out there, it was you go up a hill, there was a bunch of mobile home and houses, but different relatives, It was, they called it the gypsy camp, everybody around there, but it was a bunch of gypsies that lived around there. That's what everybody called it. The non-gypsies, and we called it too. But right up on that hill, right off the road, I had a relative. He told me this his whole life. I wouldn't pay attention. He said one night he woke up, hit a mobile home. When he woke up, I guess his door right there, and when you look through it, the door when you come out of his room, it's the hallway to the mobile home, and there was a window. And I remember his mobile home stood up. Some of them you got to level them, and they're kind of high. Mobile homes,
Okay.
and they put bricks
They're
under
a little
them,
higher off the ground or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. but he remembers he heard something, he smelled something rotten. He said, "Now this is when he was about 12 or 13." And he stood up in bed, like that, and he looked and said he seen basically a Sasquatch with red eyes. He told me, I thought he was just joking or just trying for attention, but he told me that his whole life, and in his adult life. And that wasn't I wasn't even a quarter of a mile from, the woods,
Yeah,
all
from where you
connected.
saw yours is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. All this probably within a mile, I've heard people talk about things. And I've heard the old timers that live down towards the burial mounds, and they call it Fort Coffee down there with the burial mounds too, but it's a bunch of houses and country, it's not even a store or anything, but that's what they call it. And I've heard the old timers tell me that they've smelled something when they're fishing down there. And, it's several stories. And, like I said, I've got stuff all over, that, there's no really timeline here, but, I'll tell you something else. There's a friend that used to live down there by the burial mounds, the spiral mounds. Well, I've knew her my whole life. Go ahead. I didn't mean that. Was you
No,
going to say
no,
something?
no. Go ahead,
Okay.
please.
I know I talk a lot. I know
No,
I talk.
that's great. I enjoy it when the guests talk a lot and I listen and take it in and just I'm like a listener or viewer of the show myself, but I get to interact. So yes, please keep
Yeah.
going, Ashes. This is interesting.
Well, this lady, she's a good friend of mine. She moved over here where I live in the bigger city in Arkansas, but she grew up. She still got relatives over there where I grew up, 15 miles, and that live close. She used to live close by the mountains. We'll just call them the Spiral Mountain. Well, it's a big black community that African American community. I've grown up with them my whole life, lived down there, and there's some white folks too, but it's predominantly, African American. And I've known her my whole life. Her brother's a pastor. She's 65 years old. I go over to her and see her all the time. She lives like a quarter of a mile from here in an apartment. I'll go visit her, and if she needs something, I'll go get it, or I'll take her to the store because she don't like to drive. And yeah, so I'll go take her, and she's just a good friend. Known her for a long time. And we were talking one day. She likes Big Red. I had to go take her and get a Big Red. And she was, I said, I was talking about cryptids. We never talk about that. We're either talking about family, what's going on with family, or football. She likes football, which I don't. And we're talking about God. And I don't know how the subject came up about cryptids, but she's telling me, she said, well, I got to tell you this. She said, I was 15 years old. Me and my first cousin, we snuck out. I'm sorry about hitting the mic. And she went to the neighbors. I don't know. She probably was going out talking with boys or something. But she remembers she heard something behind her, and she looked, and she told me. Now, I haven't told her about nothing like about Dog Man or, Big. She knows everybody kind of heard of Bigfoot. But she said, I turned around, and she said, I seen the biggest, blackest wolf I've ever seen in my life, she said. I said, what do you mean? It was just a big dog? She said, no. This thing was freakish big, and she said it had red eyes and it was growling. I said, really? But it was on all fours. Now, it could have been a wolf. Well, not a wolf. There's no wolves around here. It could have been a big dog, but I don't know why. Because she's very, very intelligent, and she's got her wits about her 100% for her age, but she's not old. But I mean, she was like, no, she said this thing was like 5 foot, tall on all fours. I said, what'd you do? She said, I took off running. We could hear it behind us. Yeah. I said, I said, well, what happened? I said, how far did you have to run? She said it wasn't that far, about 100 yards, and we could still hear it. I said, did you look back? No. She said, as soon as we hit the yard and hit the porch, we turned around, it was going, she said. And it was right behind her the whole time because she could hear it.
Shit.
Now, I mean, it could have been a dog, but
it's Dogman, werewolf. It's not like they walk around constantly on 2 feet. There's many reports of them being on all fours, and then they can stand on their hind legs as well. So, and this is. Did she say anything about the eyes? Was there any?
She just said they were red. That's all she said. They were glowing
red. Oh.
That's what got me when she said that.
Yeah.
She said, I've never seen a dog's eyes grow red,
Yeah, that's kind of like a key right there. It's they're just letting the cat out of the bag with the glowing red eyes. Glowing red, glowing yellow. I've heard glowing blue as well, but yeah, there's something supernatural about that animal, and unfortunately, that predator prey kicks in as well. Like they start to run. That's one thing you should not do with any type of predator is run. But of course, we're we're freaking out, and of course, I don't blame people for running. But and that predator mind kicks in, and that is why this creature was chasing her. But I've heard that many times where these dogmen or these creatures will pace you. They could easily catch you in a heartbeat, but they don't. They just stayed back just that much, And is it because they don't want to attack you? Is it because they're actually feeding off of your fear? And by keeping you just in front and staying behind, they are creating this great fear of you. As soon as they attack you and kill you, that fear is gone. But this is a way that we can continue that fear, is just to keep pace with you.
Yeah, that's the only thing makes sense with Dogman. But when she told me the story, she told me one before this, and then it led into the story because she was telling me she had a lot. She would see her aunt, was a ghost, but she, and stuff like that in the house. But then she led to me about the dog. Now, like I said, I didn't tell her about Dogman. She's never heard of Dogman. Of course, everybody's heard about werewolf on a movie. But anyway, this was the main story she told me that really blew my mind. She said she was 9 years old, same area. And I guess she was being bad or mean or something, or it was nighttime, and her mom put her out the house. I guess, it was country, just put her out, in the yard. And I don't know if it was cold or hot or whatever, but, I'm sure it wasn't that bad outside, to put her out. But she went over there, and I don't know if you have seen them before or remember them, but those big old propane tanks that sit on the ground, they kind of long, and
I live out here in Mexico, and they're everywhere. They are everywhere. That's what everybody uses still.
Yeah, and because I would get them and ride them like a horse when I was a kid.
Of course.
Yeah, but she said she got on there and was laying down, on her back, I guess pouting or whatever, and said her mom would put her out sometimes, give her a timeout basically. But she heard something. So she, kind of sets up and she looks. Now, this is what's freaky, which I've only heard one instant of it before, was a guest on Daniel's show, the Cryptic Podcast, of kind of on the lines of this creature. She stands up, she looks, she said, I said, how far was it? She couldn't really tell me how far these creatures was, but I don't think they were super close. She stood up and looked, and there was 3 scarecrow creatures.
What?
Yes. 3 scarecrow. That would, yeah. 3. And the detail she gave me was there was 3, and it looked like a mom and a dad and a smaller one. So I said, what do you mean? She said, it looks like the mom and dad and the baby. I said, well, And she said that her eyes was like glowing, like what you could hit her eyes like white or I don't know, yellow. They weren't red. But she said it looked just like a scarecrow, you
Wow.
know.
That
Just then they were walking
how
towards her.
creepy is that? I was trying to think of a story that I heard that, but it's not. I was thinking of the Sandown. I think it's called like Sandown Clown or All Color Sam, but that looked more like a clown that people saw. It was like a mix of
Yeah.
like a clown and a robot. But
Wow.
I
Never heard of that one.
the only time I've ever heard of like scarecrows is like what Jeepers Creepers kind of deal, which I believe there's some truth to that as well.
Oh yeah, I was in Texas in the broad daylight, and I looked over, and it got me and my first cousin was working, and a guy looked just like Jeepers Creepers in the broad daylight. I forgot about that. The broad daylight. I mean, looked just like him. Mate, was it? I don't think it wasn't in October. Could have been somebody dressed for I don't know, but we looked over, and I'm telling you, 100%, it looked just like him. And it was so freaky that we had to pull over, and I wouldn't turn around.
Okay, so when you
It,
say you saw someone, was it just some guy standing or walking out, or was
it
it
was
like
an old farm. It was an old farm, and it had old truck too. Nothing like his, but it was an old rundown farm. And we was just passing by, and we was passing by. The guy was just looking at us like that, and he was dressed just like him. The black, all in black, the hat, the face. And something was wrong with his face and everything. It was. I wish I would have turned around, but it threw a fear because when you see something, you get a little bit of fear, but then it's like a shock. He said, "Oh my God, oh my God." He said, "Man, that was Jeepers Creepers." I said, "You see that too?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Dude, that looked just like you." We thought it was him. I mean, it was, but I mean, like you said, it could have been somebody dressed up. I don't know. It could have been just, something similar, but it was almost a Jeepers Creepers to a T. But as far as the scarecrow creatures, that's all she could give me, with details. And I've heard of in Kentucky, there was, I think it was a friend of Daniel's, and that told the story. And I'm pretty sure it was a girl, a lady named Sabrina. I kind of know her, I think she's a moderator too, but uh, she was telling about a scarecrow creature that something to do with a relative. I'm pretty sure I don't want to get it wrong, and say who it was, but yeah, 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 but it was a scarecrow creature they seen a long time ago, in Kentucky. So I believe, me personally, as far as the cryptics, they can be anything, man. I used to never believe in nothing, until lately that, I mean, okay, if nothing to do with secular or Christianity, but if you're a Christian, if you're a Christian, you believe in angels and, and demons and stuff, why wouldn't there be cryptics out there? Because angels, could be anything, they can change into anything. Because, in the Bible it says you can be entertaining angels and not know it. Anybody could be an angel. We don't know. They're basically shapeshifters,
yeah,
basically.
exactly. I agree. They are shapeshifters, and excuse me. And if they and people think of angels as benevolent, but the fallen were angels as well. So what's not to say that
Yeah.
they of course they can take on these disturbing forms and whatnot.
Well,
See,
I'll tell you my angel thing.
yeah,
I was going
please,
to tell
please.
you
Let's.
before the
I think
show.
that's a great segue into it.
It was 2001. I used to go in North Dakota. I was a farm painter for about 25 years, and I would, paint out in the country, do farms, paint buildings, granaries and stuff. And It was 2001. It was in August. I remember it was right before 9/11. And I had a relative was doing some paving work up there, and he done some work for a guy. He said he wants some barns painted because we'd help each other out, even though we done. So I went over there and got the job to do. So that day, not always, my wife would come with me, and then my son, I think he was, let's see, maybe 4 years old, maybe he was 3 or 4. So, and I had a just a single cab vehicle, and a long bed pickup truck at the time. So while I'm doing this job, it took like 4 or 5 hours, and for some reason that day, I think we had a new camcorder, the big camcorders. My wife was, filming, and she was taking pictures.
And what year was this in?
2001.
Okay. So not a huge.
It was about this big, but still,
it's about the mid-size. We're in the mid-size versions of the camcorders right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good size, but not one of the big 80s ones, But I'll tell you, this is kind of makes sense to what evidence I have, but it's so old. Is when I get done with a job, I always clean my hands real good, and always have these rags and cleaner and stuff like that. And I always put the tailgate down because all my equipment's in the back when I used to work. But I was cleaning my hands, and I was just, like this, had my head on, cleaning my hands. And the window, she took a picture of me, like she turned around, and took through the truck and took a picture. So, well, when she took the picture, this leads up to the whole story. I didn't see the picture for 2 months later after she took it. Well, anyway, we get done, and I was in a hurry, as always. And I took a shortcut to go to this bank. I was around, I think it was Rugby and Devil's Lake, North Dakota. And if anybody's ever lived up there, the gravel was just, they put a lot of gravel on these back roads because of snow and everything. And I was going, and some way I nose rolled my pickup, basically. I nose rolled it. Yeah. And I was going around a curve, and I couldn't stop, and I just flipped it, just totaled the vehicle. Well, it threw me out the side window. That was the only window that broke, was my window. I was driving. And the front didn't break. They cracked, but they were in the vehicle, and my son, and they just got a few scrapes, but they wasn't hurt at all, So I get thrown out. But I remember, I'll never forget this. I still remember it was like a washing machine. I got thrown out, and I remember I felt like something just grabbed me, like you take a child and you'd pick them up and grab them. That's what I felt like. When I woke up, I looked up, and there were 2 angels. I could see 2 bright lights and the wings and the angels, and they were just like coming from me, just real small. They started getting small, and then all of a sudden they just zoomed that way. Well, I thought it was just my head, what happened is I heard a bunch of muscle and tissue. I didn't break a bone, when I got thrown out a long ways, but I did, I still got injuries from the day. It's just a lot of back muscles and stuff like that. But I didn't break a bone, and which I had to stay in the hospital for like 3 weeks. I was like something with blood and stuff like that, But they were, but anyway, it could have been a lot worse. I know people that passed away, been having wrecks like that, break their neck. But anyway, it was a miracle I didn't die.
That's incredible. So you felt like when you were doing this washing machine rolling, did you feel that maybe they were like rolling you along to try to, I don't know, reduce it, or they were just there holding you, or what?
I felt the hold when I remember rolling, and then I felt the hold. It probably when I came out of the pickup. I felt like that they, I didn't see it, But in my mind, I felt like somebody, like when I went out, like something grabbed me, it just held me and just put me down in a way. But then I woke up and I seen these two angels, but I said, man, that's just my head. I just bumped, that's where I got hit. And, because I was kind of in and out.
Okay, so can you describe the two angels that you saw? What is your description of them, as best as you can remember? Because you're literally flying out of a vehicle.
Yeah, because I was kind of going in and out a little bit. I didn't, but from what I seen, it was just so bright. I didn't like see a physical form. I just seen the outline, like the wings, and then like the outline of their head. It was just an outline, just a light, but an outline. You could see like, out, and it was just a different light. It wasn't a light that I've ever seen, like a light from a lamp or a light from the sun. It was just something different. But here's what, this will blow your mind right here. I got to take a drink of water. I'm talking so much, but
not a problem. While you're taking a drink of water, I'll fill this this void here. Is your story actually reminded me of an incident that I had. I was in the parking lot of our school, and my friend had pulled up, and he had this new truck that had a big push grill on the front, like, bush grill or push. Some people call it push bar, bush grill. And I lifted myself up on it. Like I just was standing there talking, and I just grabbed it and kind of like lifted myself up. And he decided that it was a good time to hit the gas and start driving. Okay, so we're in the parking lot, and he starts driving, and I'm yelling at him to stop. And I'm in front of his truck holding onto this grill, and my arms are locked in, and I'm like, stop, stop. Every time I yelled stop, he'd go a little faster, a little faster. I don't know how fast he was going, but he finally, when I yelled, stop the fucking car, stop the fucking truck.
Yeah.
He tapped the brakes. When he did, my shoes hit the pavement, and they caused me to fly back, like forward almost. And I went flying, and then I started rolling in front of the truck. For some reason, I felt like something rolled me one extra time. Okay. And when I opened my eyes, the treads of his tire were right in front of my face. And so when you're saying like these angels were there with you, I was like 17 years old. I felt the same thing. I felt that an angel had rolled me one more time, because if it didn't, my head would have been squished underneath the tire. But sorry to steal your thunder on this one. But it was just that. It was just like this click. It was just this click of your story, and I was like, oh my God, something kind of nowhere near. This was not. I was not thrown out of a vehicle or anything like that. This is, maybe if we're talking, because we're in kilometers, maybe 15 kilometers an hour is as fast as he was going, which isn't very fast in miles. But yeah, but please continue now. So you saw these, more of like the outlines of them with this bright light.
But this was with confirmation what happened 2 months later. So my wife, I stayed in the hospital for 3 weeks. I had a camper. There was an RV park, so my father-in-law come pulled it. I didn't have a vehicle, just a car, and that's a long ways, from North Dakota to Oklahoma at the time. And till about 2 months later, 9/11 hit. You know how that was, and but anyway, that was bad. But she got some photos and was printing them out. You had to take them, remember, and drop them off.
Of course,
and get them. And I remember I had a PC at the time. I'm PC illiterate 100%, but I some way when I got the picture, it was the picture she took. She took a bunch of pictures that day when I had the wreck, even a picture of the vehicle afterwards. But she took that picture when I was cleaning my hands, on the tailgate. Well, I look at it immediately. I see the outline of an angel above my head. The most beautifulest, brilliant light and an outline of an angel. Okay. So, I've showed it many years to a lot of people, and most people only few don't see it, and the ones that don't see it are usually the ones that not really living. I don't know if say living for God or what, but it's just the majority of them are just, I don't see it, But I don't try to make it that there's something there that ain't, But I believe 100%. But here's the deal: I took the picture, and I can't remember if I took it somewhere and blew it up or done it on my PC. I cannot remember. My memory's bad in some ways. But in this picture, this one blows my mind, right? I still got the picture, the small one, but it's old, I've laminated.
I
I
would
got it
love
on
for
my
you
wall.
if you could just take a picture of a picture or something like that and send it
I
over.
will. I'll send it. I'll send it to you. There's some other pictures I want to send you too from Falk, Arkansas, that I've just got recently. But I blew the picture up, and above my head, you can see me. I'm just like this. This, picture of the angel, the lighted angel. But right behind it, there is a face of a man kind of in black. And then behind that, like in the clouds, is you see eyes and faces. And it seems like to me, what I believe is that angel, my guardian angel or an angel, stopped the death angel from getting me and taking me on. You know what I mean? That's my opinion, because there's other faces in that picture. I mean, I believe it's not like, something that was messed up when they made the photo or printed it out. You could see like a man's face, but behind the angel, it's like he was blocking it, and there was like little faces in the clouds in the back. That's when I blew it up and kind of looked at it.
Wow. So you feel that like death was at your doorstep.
Yeah.
But you were being protected. You were being
yes, 100%. Yeah, 100%, man. I have no doubt in my mind. I respect everybody. I respect everybody's religions. I respect whatever they believe. That's fine. But I know 100% without a doubt that there's a God, and there's a devil, and there's supernatural things, and there's and there's angels there to protect us. I don't worship angels. I only worship Jesus Christ, and the Father. But there is angels out there, and I believe that God disperses them. If you pray, for protection, He will disperse them. Because a lot of times when I've had demonic things happen, I pray and. I'm not afraid anymore. It's been a while, thank God, that I haven't physically seen, which I'll tell. I don't want to keep you too long. I know we've been going for a while.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
But I believe that I don't know if it's anything to do with my blood, of being a Romney or Gypsy, or it's just me being, living for God or just spiritual. But, I've had a lot of supernatural things happen. And I guess that'll get into my other stories, I guess. But I've been living here about 3 years. Me and my son, we share a place, a little townhouse apartment here in the city in Arkansas. But about 3 years ago, I was for about 6 years. Well, for about 6 years, I was living in the same town with my ex-girlfriend. Well, we was living there, and she had three nephews and a niece that came down from Wisconsin that stayed with us for a while because they had a stepdad that was just being not abusive and not the S way, but just being verbally abusive and a little bit physical, but not the S way. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking
about. But anyway, I said, fine, let them come here. I'm not that kind of person. I wouldn't want to see a kid, be done wrong. So they couldn't come there, and they didn't have morals like we did. They weren't outlaws or nothing, but they needed to be taught a little bit of morals. They wasn't growing up in a household. But So one day we're in the living room, me and my ex, I'll just say girlfriend, and her niece runs out of the bedroom and said, "Aunt, why did you throw that lighter at me?" And she said, "I never threw no lighter at you." "Yeah, here it is. I seen it fly across. I looked over and you were standing at the door." And I looked at her and no, I wasn't, So we thought she was just joking, right? All right. Then one of her nephews, which was a twin, he comes to us. "I got to tell y'all something." Now, this kid here was 14 at the time. Now, um, he wasn't slow or he's very intelligent. You know what I mean? He doesn't have anything wrong with him or nothing. I don't know how to put it, but smart kid. He comes to us. He said, "There's a lady in my ear telling me to do bad things." And, first I thought he was joking. I said, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, it looks like Aunt there, so it looked like, his aunt, my girlfriend, and was telling him to do bad things." Now, he really didn't elaborate on the bad things. I can't really remember because it's been about 6 years ago. Well, I started taking it serious. I said, I told him, "You gotta pray to the Lord, you gotta rebuke it, this and that. A lot of supernatural things would happen. Well, he would go out of town with his dad. It was summertime and work with his dad and his dad's first cousin. And me and my girlfriend at the time was in the living room and we heard something slam, and it was the toilet lid. And if it slams one time, you say, "Well, it fell," right?
Yeah, fair enough. Yes.
Yeah, but it slammed two times. So yeah, we was having those kind of things. And now this is getting to the physical thing that I seen was this. I don't want to kind of get ahead of my story, but I told him I went to him one day. I think this is when he come back uh, from a trip with his dad. I said, "I got to talk to you." His name was Michael. Well, I went in there, prayed. I got in the room. I prayed. The Lord told me, he spoke to me, said, "You can run it out, but it'll come back." He's got to denounce it, you know, the demon, right? So I go back in there. I know that sounds weird, but I go back in there. I tell him, I said, "What did you do?" "No, what do you mean?" I said, "You're not in trouble, dude." I said, "Tell me what you done. Do you mess with something? Go ahead and tell me." "Yeah, I messed with the Ouija board." Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, uh, yeah, I made him pray and everything and stuff like that. And I never seen it no more, but I'm getting ahead of my story. When I told him this was about a day before this. I was in the bathroom and, in my girlfriend's bathroom. I was by myself. It had like a thin curtain because this was all out of the way. This bedroom was like an old garage. And it was just me and her home at the time. And she's in the living room. And I'm taking a leak. All of a sudden, this thing appears right here beside me. And it looked just like her. Looked just like my girlfriend at the time.
What?
Yeah, but it was pale and it was just kind of, it had the hair, kind of looked like the Grudge is what it looked, is basically. And I said, "What do you want?" And it said, "I'm waiting on Michael." I was waiting on, I said, "No, you ain't." And I started, rebuking it and everything and stuff like that. It went away. But after, then he came back and I told him, what happened and all this and that. And, I told him he had to, rebuke and stuff. But that thing right there never really happened after that anymore. But there was times that, I was recording something and I seen orbs, all even inside the house. No dust. It wasn't dust or nothing. It was actual orbs. But there was other things that would happen. I was in bed one night, and it was the same bedroom, and you'd step up to get in the kitchen. It was an old house, man. And I'm laying in bed. I open my eyes, and I see these three shadowy looking creatures that looked like an alien. They did, like three aliens. Like the alien type of head, but I didn't see their eyes or anything. And they had like bulbs on their hands, like their fingers come out and they had like round bulbs. Yeah. And it was just like kind of not cartoonish, but it was weird. And I just
I
started
was thinking
rebuking them.
cartoonish actually kind of thing in a
Yeah.
way, but yes.
Yeah. But there was a lot of demonic stuff happened in that old house. Now, I think it was a part of other people that was in the house, a couple, it was just, me and her and her nephews and niece and then her brother, but, some of them wasn't living right, you know what I mean? And the old house was old. You don't know who's been in there before
Do you
or
feel
stuff
that
like
do you feel that the Ouija board like stepped things up, ramped things up?
Oh, yeah. 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 Cause there was all kind of stuff happen. And I'll be honest with you. My middle brother, he's doing good now, but at the time I'll just be honest, him and my nephew came and stayed with me. My brother got out of jail, and he was all into the witchcraft too, the Wiccan stuff. And, he was deep in it. And, after he left, there was, demonic stuff going on. And whenever things would happen in my life, like demonic, it's like the Lord would, give me, how do you say, discernment, of what it was. Cause I knew one time something was in there. I could hear it. It was a demon of hatred, So, I prayed and got that out of there. But it was like a magnet. That house was a magnet, which we ended up selling it, and moving it. And they tore it down and made it a business. But there was a lot of demonic stuff. And, I've had a lot of things in life, that God showed me, like demonic things, like what demons look like, which I never asked to see them, like what a drug demon looks like, or demon of tormenting demon, and
It's funny that you say all this because some people might be like a drug demon, a torment demon. I I believe, my personal opinion, I believe that demons are responsible for a lot of our addictions. I think that they, possess us and inflict this. It's because demons are the disembodied spirits of the dead Nephilim. And when they're cast out, they're sent into like the wasteland. You were saying like the dry land. They're cast in this wasteland. So when they get a chance to possess someone, they want to fulfill those needs, those wants, whether it be food or drink or drugs or like these worldly types of afflictions. I don't want to say afflictions, but these worldly types of things that they can partake in here where they can't there. And so they come over,
Yeah.
they possess us. Some possessions are minor, very minor, and we don't even know. We could be walking around with a handful of demons. I think that we just, that is why we continue to go back to church and repent, is because, no matter how holy or how great we think we are, there's always an access. There's always an invitation. There's always a doorway in. We always have to be careful. And it might not even be something we do on purpose. Someone might offer you something and you accept a gift. That gift could be imbued with something negative, a demon in itself. And now you've just invited it into your house. There's so many things. So it's constantly, we have to constantly be on the defensive as well, because we need to always go take care of ourselves and clean ourselves.
Yes, exactly. I'll tell you this. I got one more story. I'll tell you.
All right, let's do it.
I don't know if you want to hear this one. It's not. It's not like it's a little gory.
Let's do it, man.
All right. Okay. The same house. My girlfriend had a friend that she was known since her childhood, right? And our backyard was a fenced-in backyard. It was not a fancy place at all, but she needed a place, to stay. She rent from us basically. So she had a camper, little small camper that she moved in the backyard. It had a fence that you open up and close. So, and it wasn't a nice part of town at all, but you wouldn't get bothered there. But anyway, she set up in the backyard. She had electric water and everything. A little small camper, just her, older lady. I think she's, well, I'll say older. I guess it's not really old, but it's about 55 at the time. But she was fine most of the time. I think really, Raj, she had mental problems, but I also believe that she had a lot of demonic problems too. But anyway, one time she said her hip was hurting or something, and she came in because she'd come up there and we would cook or something. Of course, we'd feed her. I would feed anybody, if they're hungry. But she came up there and I said, the girlfriend said, "Why don't you let me pray for you?" I said, "Yeah, let me pray for her." And I went to touch her, and her eyes got real big. It's like her face disfigured. And she took off, ran out of the house, and that you might have said, well, that's nothing, but I know there wasn't. And I do believe that she was possessed when I get to this story here. But she would act strange sometimes, not all the times, you could kind of pass it off as mental. So, which I think she was too. But this is really sad story. So this was one morning and she's in like I said, the backyard. Now, when you walk out of the house, you walk out of it on the porch and you make a right and you go, well, there's a fence there. It's real narrow. And then you go in the backyard to her camper. Well, I'm in bed. My girlfriend's nephew comes hollering in the house. Come here, come here, come here. Uh, uh, I'm not going to say her name, but so-and-so's, something's wrong. She's bleeding. I said, what are you talking about? So I get up, I go out and go out the front door. Immediately, I'm seeing drops of blood, blood, just a blood trail, a lot of blood. So I'm saying, oh, God, okay, I had my phone. I said, I'm probably going to call 911. So I speed it up, go there. Well, she's got the camper door open, real small camper. She's standing there. So what happened to you? She said, I cut my tongue. I said, oh, God, well, you must, accidentally chopped on some glass or something. That's what I'm thinking,
of
right? Of
course, yeah. That's what I would too.
I'm talking about in this camper, man. It's. I've seen horror movies and I've never seen so much blood. There was blood everywhere. Okay, what she done is these voices told her that if she didn't cut her tongue out, that her children were going to die and her grandkids. So she almost severed her tongue, and she took a paring knife, and I guess it was sharp enough. Then she took a box cutter, and she was going to take her eye out, but she said it was too painful. So I take her to the hospital, and we tell them. I said she done this. I think she needs to get help. So she went to a place for a month, and then they let her out. I don't know why they let her out, but there was so much blood, right, that they had a little sink. It was just full, dude. And they said if we wouldn't have got her in time, she would have died. That's how much blood. And man, I would pray for her and just do, but we ended up moving. And this is the sad part, and I think that anybody that has problems out there, guys, and are depressed, you need to get help, talk to somebody. I tell this to anybody. Yeah, talk to somebody, anybody, find you a good.
Those voices that, they're hearing, it seems to be, I had a lot of people come forward with, and we'll say there's kind of like these two kind of separate, well, I don't want to say separate things. I think they're exactly the same: schizophrenia and targeted individuals. I don't know if you've ever heard of a targeted individual.
No,
a targeted.
I did got a theory. After you get done, I got a theory about that. But
all right, so targeted individuals are people who are targeted, and they believe, and I'm not saying yes or no to any of this. Okay. I'm not saying, oh yeah, they're wrong or they're right, because I'm not in their shoes. They believe that they are being spied on and hunted and targeted by a community or a community of people that are watching them. They also have voices in their heads as well. And these voices are telling them to do things, which leads me to schizophrenia. And I don't know if you know who Jerry Marzinski is. Jerry Marzinski is a psychotherapist, and he's been studying schizophrenia for over 45 years. Okay. He doesn't believe it's a mental disorder. Like, don't get me wrong, you need help, but he believes it's something far sinister, far demonic. And he's like, schizophrenia, people with schizophrenia, the voices follow a pattern. They start like there is like 12 distinct patterns of these voices, and it's like self-harm, self-loathing. They want you to do things. They want to isolate you as well. They want you to get you to do certain things. And he's like, it doesn't matter where in the world you are. It doesn't matter what type of person you are. You could speak Japanese. You could live in Japan, and you're going to have these same type of phenomena happening. If you're schizophrenic, you have the same phenomena happening as someone who is in, Mississauga or someone who's in Boston, or someone who is in Mexico City or in South Africa in Cape Town. You're going to have the same thing happening all throughout the world. Doesn't matter. This is what's happening. So this is this treatment, like, you need to be treated. And the drugs that they give you just numb you. They actually kind of like zombify you, and they numb it. They reduce the intensity of the voices, but it doesn't stop it. It's not a treatment. This is not a treatment. This is like a numbing. That's all it is. And they're not actually treating you. So yeah, he has a treatment of dealing with people, and I'm trying to remember the success rate. It's not like this fantastic, oh, this is the 100%. I think it's around like and don't quote me on this, it's either between 30 to 60% success rate of actually curing people from schizophrenia, which tells you, though, even if it's 30%, it's still working. There's something happening with this one. So he is having a good success rate with it. Nice. I think it's more along the 60%, but we believe it is some sort of demonic possession of sorts. Like and giving credit to the targeted people, you are being targeted, but you're being targeted not by individual people, but you're being targeted by entities. And perhaps these entities are possessing other people just for a slight moment, just to give you that belief that these people, these individuals, are actually targeting you. When in fact, I believe it's entities that are targeting you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've seen relatives, come out of it, eventually get saved and come to God, actually, and not be like that anymore. But I'll tell you my theory after I tell you what happened with her. We've ended up moving, and we bought some property out in the country in Oklahoma, but we didn't work out, and that's why I'm here where I'm at. But when we were last together, my girlfriend, 3 years ago, we got a call. And it was in December, and it was freezing. I remember it was 2000. I think it was 2002 December. I'm pretty sure. But she went out into the Arkansas River, the same lady that tried to cut her tongue out in about 3 foot of water, and she deleted herself. And yeah, I mean, we tried to push her to get, like I said, I wasn't like super close with her. She wasn't a relative, but she was a friend, and stuff. And tried to, and I hated to see it. And it was like her family, like a lot of them didn't care. A lot of people that have these problems, they family just push them away, just write them off, as I say. And I kind of got a theory, didn't mean to interrupt you earlier, but I kind of believe it's just a theory, man. It's just probably wrong, but I believe a lot of people that has those problems when they hear things and see things, for sometimes in their life, they see through the spiritual realm, and our mortal minds can't handle the spiritual realm, at all. Because God spoke to me one time when I was seeing things, and I said, God, what is it? Because he didn't show me the whole picture of what was in the room, and he said, you can't handle it, you know. And I really believe if we see actually in the spirit world what is around us, and sometimes it'll break our mind, our physical mind. And that's what I really believe. That a lot of people that when they get these mental problems and talking to themselves and stuff, some part in their life, either they messed with something or something happened they seen in the spiritual realm, and it kind of broke your mind. I just think you're not supposed to, until you pass away, out of this flesh into spirit, your soul, and get renewed. I don't think that you're supposed to see in the spiritual realm. And I think that people mess with all this DMT and these psychedelics and stuff, it's not a good thing, man. That's my opinion. We're not supposed to do things like that, because we're trying to seek answers in every which way around us, but there's only one answer is God. I don't know why people just don't go to it. Now, like I said, I'm not trying to offend anybody on here, what their beliefs are, anything. I've always been that way. But I've seen in my life for the peace and my peace of mind and me, being a better person, that's what's got me through. So
I I I think you're on the right track. I think like this is a collection of everything. I believe that, you know, they've seen into I agree. I think they have seen into a spiritual because a lot of this usually there's a trigger, and that trigger is some sort of drug use. Okay. And they have some sort of drug induced psychosis. So everybody's like, oh, that is just messed with their mind. But I actually believe you are 100% correct that they have a direct channel. They connected to the upside down or whatever you want to call it, to an ether, and that ether is now connected to them. It's kind of like it's a doorway. And I've explained this before when I've watched what is that? Scammer Payback. Okay, with these scammer videos where they allow the scammer in, the scammer can come through a doorway, but they can go back through that same doorway. So what you're doing is it's a revolving door. Yes, you can see into theirs, but now they can see into you. They have a connection. They have an attachment to you. And it's funny that you say this about like being able to, if we were able to see things, it would just blow our mind. I believe that is why God limited the amount of light spectrum that we actually see. We only see less than 1%. And Brad from the Awaken podcast was talking exactly like you were talking as well, that we would go insane. If we actually saw what is there, we would go insane. And it's, this is a great topic to sit and talk about. I think there's so much more that we can talk about this. And I agree with you that, they've made a connection. Somehow there's been a connection, a line established. Like Nietzsche says, when you look into the abyss looks back into you. And, you don't want to be changed by it, but it is changing you. And that's what and I'm just getting into Enochian magic, actually. Like I'm starting to learn about it, not to like, I'm going to get into it. No, but it's to inform people about it. And that's one thing is that, when they were going into, was it the ethers or learning about the keys, that it was changing them. It's not like you can just look as an observer. No, when you observe, it affects you and it starts to change you. So I think this is all tied together, like these targeted individuals, schizophrenia, drug-induced psychosis, Enochian magic, with this, some people called it Adamic language, which was like one of the very first languages so that Adam can communicate with God and communicate with the angels. And this is John Dee and Edward Kelly started to find it again, I guess, or rediscover this. And yeah, it's a very disturbing thing to, I think it really can really affect people. And that is why I'm learning about Enochian magic, because I want to inform people all about it, because I've heard about it little bits here and there, but I'm like, I need to tell people about it, what it is, what it can do. And it's something to be careful of. Like, don't get into it.
Well, that's just like, when we fast for God to get more spiritual. We feel closer to Him. Well, when they make drugs and meth, it's all wizardry. They're mixing stuff, pharmaceutical type things, and it's a form of witchcraft, man. When they make them hallucinogens, and a lot of people that's on that, the meth and stuff, it makes them hallucinate, and they see this like a lot of demonic stuff. You stay up for days, you're basically fasting for the devil instead of fasting for God, and you're opening up them doors, And I think to me, that's all witchcraft, all mixing those vats and all doing that stuff that's evil. I mean, that's a form of witchcraft. I mean, that's my opinion, because if you're not sleeping, you ain't fast, doing the right way. You're not sleeping, you're not eating, and a lot of people that's on that drug and do things, they see a lot of stuff, shadow people and
Yes.
stuff
Yeah.
like that.
When you talk in DMT, you talk like the mechanized elves or something like that. Yeah. Like, and it's not, again, like when I was talking about Jerry and proving that these schizophrenia has this pattern. Well, DMT has a pattern. There's things that are repeatable with it. I want to get, his name is Danny on here, where he has taken DMT and they use the lasers to actually see code. They're actually seeing on DMT, they put lasers on the wall, and this is repeatable. People are seeing like a matrix style code through these lasers, and to the point that they're not feeding people what's the word I'm looking for? They're not giving them like information prior to this. They're just here, like a prompt. They're not prompting them. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. And people are seeing this. It's repeated. That is science. That is scientific. That's part of the scientific method, is to conduct an experiment and then repeat it and see what happens. And if the pattern starts to emerge, there's something there. There is something there.
Yeah, there's something there. I mean, everything's spiritual. This world is just nothing. It says in the Bible, what's solid is not. What you can't see is what's real. This is so I believe that everything's spiritual.
And here's the thing: is some people believe, like, let's say we are in a matrix. Okay, we're in a construct of a world. It doesn't change it. There's still a creator. Like some people think it's like, okay, it actually adds more credence to there being an actual divine creation, like a divine creator to create this. It doesn't matter. It doesn't wreck that at all. It adds more to it, actually, in my opinion. It gives it more credence that, yep, there is a God.
Yeah, that's some good stuff, man. I'll have to look into that, what you was talking. I've never heard of that magic you was talking. I mean, I don't study, when I was a kid, I never got into witchcraft, but I knew, a little bit about the Wiccans. It's because like in our culture growing up, and I didn't see my mom or dad do it, but I seen other relatives, like when people would, they would say, have their eye on you, they would take their picture, put salt and burn it, just different type of real superstitious, my people are still, a lot of them are superstitious, because years ago they didn't believe in God, 100 some years ago, my culture, they didn't believe in God, it was real superstitious, with all these creatures and stuff. And I've heard that even my people is the one started about werewolves, from Transylvania and all of the Romanians and stuff. But I've heard, I've always been warned about different creatures, you growing up as a kid and hear stories, but I don't know. But I do believe that, I'll say this, and I'll shut up. But as far as like Dog Man is, I believe 100% it's evil, now, as far as the government, I believe the government probably got something to do with it or whatever, but, you hear a bunch of things. And then as far as Bigfoot, I think it's part of the Nephilim, that's my opinion. What's your opinion on that, right?
I believe now Bigfoot can be multiple things. I don't.
Yeah, yeah, I
I'm
do
not sure
believe
if
it.
it is Nephilim. I was talking with Bo from the Bump podcast. Actually, that episode just dropped the other day, and he was saying that he actually had someone talk, like this creature spoke to this woman and said it was an Eliud. An Eliud is the offspring of the Nephilim. So
Okay.
right on track with the Nephilim, but it's the offspring of the Nephilim, which it could be. It also could be the creation of the Watchers. The Watchers were messing with genetics as well. Yeah, and like there's so many possibilities. I believe the Nephilim. There's a tie-in with it, 100%.
Yeah,
Is it the actual Nephilim? I'm I'm not saying I don't think it's the actual Nephilim. I am leaning towards more
yeah,
of the
me too.
the offspring. It could be the offspring, like the Eliud. Hopefully, I got that right. With the Nephilim, but with the Nephilim, sorry, with the Bigfoot. But that all being said, like there is something with Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Like there's people who are all like, oh, it's in the physical camp. That's it. It's an ape. That's all it is. No, it isn't. This is something else. There's too many stories, too many experiences, too many sightings where something supernatural happens with this creature.
Exactly.
Yes, there is some supernatural looking things that happen to some creatures in our regular everyday world, like says like the cuttlefish that can change its color and camouflage really easily. Like the gecko can do that as well. Some things will form into. I think it's like the octopus. Is very much. Some people might think it's magical, or spirit beyond our regular, but that's not what this creature is ape like. But then it does things that are beyond that, way, way beyond that, like cloaking, disappearing, literally walking through a portal in a tree. There's too many things that happen with this, orbs appearing and then all of a sudden there's a Sasquatch there, or UFOs appearing and then there's a Sasquatch there as well. Too many things are happening to say that it's not. Now, my belief is that this is some sort of interdimensional being. Okay, whether, like I said, Eliud, that is, or Nephilim, or something that is in another dimension is able to cross over, through the ethers, using one of the keys, is able to come through. Now, the longer it spends in our physical world, the more it has to abide by our physics. This is my belief that it starts to become more physical. It starts to become less spiritual, less magical, less woo. And it has to actually start to abide more by our rules here. Then when it crosses over, it can then regain those abilities, like recharge almost. But the longer it spends here, the more it actually adjusts and becomes part of our world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about, yeah, I believe you. And I think that we should agree to disagree. A lot of people, because like I said, you got people that believe they're 100%, physical and then 100% spiritual. I think it's a mixture, like you said.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think the longer they spend
definitely.
here, the more they actually become physical, and then they start to, give credence to or more clout to that physical camp because they're here that long and they have to be physical. But they can still cross over. They can still use the creek bed as a portal to walk through. And once they do, all bets are off. They're back to that spiritual world. Now, when I was talking about the Enochian magic, when this episode comes out, I will have already released one episode of Enochian magic, which is just a starter into it. I'm working on the second episode as well. I'm going to be doing multiple episodes that aren't that long, maybe like a half hour, 40 minutes. And they are just a step through of each one of these. And, it ties in with Aleister Crowley as well. And but he is down the line from the Enochian magic. He participated in what was rediscovered. That's the best way I can say. So he participated in what was rediscovered. The main two people who actually rediscovered it are Lee and Kelly. So John Lee and Edward Kelly, and it's interesting. And they started communicating. Like Edward was the scryer and the seer, and Lee was the one who would dictate the questions. And he was very scientific, actually, like extremely smart man. This is back in the 1500s. Extremely smart man, and he is actually the part of the inspiration for James Bond 007.
Oh,
he was a secret spy to Queen Elizabeth I, and he would sign his letters 007.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that I'm building on this, learning as I go. And once I finish these episodes, then, I'm more than happy to go on other people's shows to disperse it as well. But my show is going to be like the jumping point, and who knows whose shows I'll go on to talk about it, but we'll see.
That'd be great. Can't wait for it. That's very interesting.
It is. Well, Ashes, I don't want to keep you any longer. This was a great episode. I like having the experiences in the beginning and then a great conversation at the end. It was fantastic. One last time, why don't you give a shout out to your channels?
Oh, my gaming channel is Ashes Antics, and this is my logo here. And then my podcast channel is, you type in at the Boom Room 777.
All right.
Yes, on YouTube, all on YouTube.
And I have a question with your gaming channel. What games are you playing?
I play mostly zombie games. I really like the zombie genre, but I'm playing Valheim. It's a very good game. Mostly crafting, crafting zombie games. That's what I really like playing, the survival type game. I don't like the old, the everybody Call of Duty. I'm just not that kind of guy, or Fortnite. I just don't play that. I like playing stuff different. So
it's interesting. Like I'm not a fan of horror movies or anything, but I love watching zombie movies. I love watching the survival aspect of it as well. So I can imagine playing those games would be quite interesting as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I really dig them, man. I do.
All right, Ashes. Thank you so much for this. I really actually enjoyed this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm looking forward to continuing that with you as well.
I appreciate it.
All right, everyone. That was Ashes. And he has some crazy experiences, really interesting, and a lot of times, like he said, you can't really say, I saw Bigfoot, but he's positive that was Bigfoot, 99% positive that was Bigfoot. And I agree with him, that came crashing through the woods there. And then also being rescued by the angels as well. Like, I believe that we have a guardian angel. We have assigned at least one guardian angel. I totally believe that throughout the whole life that we have that there. And, and like Ashes said, like God, if we pray for it, he will send them there to watch over us. And I believe that. I really do. So, if you're going through any hard times, just send a prayer up, pray to God, ask for guidance, ask for help, ask for assistance, and you'd be surprised where it comes, because sometimes it comes in the most unusual, unnatural ways. And next thing you know, you're being guided in a way that is just divine. So until then, everyone, keep your curiosity wandering, keep the light lit, and always find your way home.
Beneath the stars where shadows grow, the Nephilim's echoes whisper low. Bigfoot roams through the forest deep, and Dogman prowls where the brave won't sleep. Across lost history we wonder why, seeking the truth that time tried to hide. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit, through the darkness don't ever quit. In the codex, the mysteries come, and always find your way back home. UFOs streak through the velvet skies, aliens watch with unblinking eyes. The paranormal hums where silence breaks, in the void of secrets a lantern wakes. Through hidden realms and stories untold, the cold gas flame is a light to hold. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit, through the darkness don't ever quit. In the codex, the mysteries come, and always find your way back home. UFOs streak through the velvet skies, aliens watch with unblinking eyes. The paranormal hums where silence breaks, in the void of secrets a lantern wakes. Through hidden realms and stories untold, the cold gas flame is a light to hold. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit, through the darkness don't ever quit. In the codex, the mysteries come, and always find your way back home. Legends rise from the earth's deep core, a lost legacy we can't ignore. With every step, the veil grows thin, revealing worlds where the strange begins. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit, through the darkness don't ever quit. In the codex, the mysteries come,